Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my opinion. And the Kolkata Knight Riders have won this game by 6 wickets, and this was a fairly clinical win from them, fairly comfortable. And they weren't in control of the game for only really 3 overs, and the reason why they weren't in control of that game were fairly unsurprising. Their death bowling isn't great. You could even see that from their kind of the squad list. And I think that despite the fact that they conceded 47 runs in the last 3 overs, what they did before effectively put the game to bed. And 131 all in all, they had to chase 132. They did that quite easily, all for kind of all the batsmen getting some kind of a start. And yeah, KKR will take a lot of positives from this game, but there's that one negative which is fairly unsurprising to have been exhibited today. They're gonna have to solve that because if considering they lost the plot that much, yes, with Jadeja and Dhoni batting, but 84 for 5 after 17 overs with that much momentum. You can't always rely on the spinners to just do that well. You can't always rely on Umesh Yadav to probably have bowled the best I've ever seen him bowl. And you can't rely on Russell to bowl 4 overs all the time. And his first 2 overs are brilliant. The next 2 overs, I was surprised that they went the way they did. 1 for 38 in 4 overs. His last 2 overs weren't too great, but the first 2 were pretty good. And so those positives for KKR, sure, especially with the key players standing up. But yeah, the death bowling is a huge question mark. They're going to have to solve that. And another positive for them was Sheldon Jackson, an outstanding job keeping today. But there is a positive of that and a slight selection headache if that's going to be the case, if he's going to be the keeper for the entire season. So the starting 11s for both teams. Moeen Ali, I think he wasn't. He had a visa issue, so he'll be available for the next game after also a 3-day quarantine as well. Because the visa has been done now. He is still flying to India, and he'll be available from the next game. So I actually didn't think Mitchell Santner would get a game today, but I think that CSK, they don't play a frontline spinner. They rely on their finger spinning all-rounders to be their 2 spinners. So Mitchell Santner was bought as a backup for Moeen Ali, and so playing him in the side, retaining those 2 finger spinning all-rounders in the 11. Yeah, I think it was fairly understandable. And then the second change could have been either or. I would have played my KM Asif was in my 11, and instead they played Tushar Deshpande, kind of either or. So not too many surprises in this 11 at all. And then for KKR, them going only 3 overseas players, and Sam Billings, Andre Russell and Sunil Narayan. I believe they're reserving a spot as for their 4th overseas player, and Pat Cummins when he returns from international duty. And I think that this was they played Sheldon Jackson, who was the keeper, and he did admirably well today. Had a great game. And as I said before, I will get to the intricacies of how that will affect their selections if they do play him in the side for the whole season. And Shreyas Iyer won the toss and chose to field first. Now, the CSK openers being Gaikwad and Devon Conway. And the first over was a bit of a mixed bag. There was no runs off the bat. And Umesh Yadav, you got quite a lot of swing and seam movement for the entirety of his 4 overs, especially his first 3 overs. And I personally thought it's the best I've ever seen him bowl. He was that good. And despite the fact that there were 2 wides and a no ball in the first over, the over was generally a class over. 1 wicket for Umesh Yadav, off a slightly wide delivery where there was quite a lot of away swing on it. We've seen Gaikwad be dismissed when the ball swings, usually off Trent Bolt. But off Umesh Yadav, who was dismissed today, caught in the slip, a great catch by Nitish Rana. And so yeah, a 4-ball duck for Gaikwad. And this was the stage we still kind of thought, despite the fact of the amount of swing in the first over, it's something that you see often a lot. It's a characteristic of the Wankhede surface where, despite the fact it's generally a batting friendly track, a batting friendly venue, there's always something for the seam bowlers, especially up top. The ball does swing quite a lot, and with the movement Umesh Yadav extracted, it was fairly expected, and he bowled really well today, as I said. And so him getting out, you kind of thought, right, that's a huge factor of the runs that CSK scored, the contributions that he had last season. Him being out without scoring was a huge bonus for KKR. And there's a bit of a mini partnership between Devon Conway and Robin Uthappa, and the latter's innings I really enjoyed, 28 of 21. Despite a disappointing dismissal, I thought that until then he didn't put a foot wrong. And what I enjoyed about this innings was how he moved to the leg side, move across to the off stump to hit through the leg side, kind of playing the ball through fine leg leg side delivery from Umesh Yadav, then playing the ball over square leg for 6 of the same bowler. And the 6 off Shivam Mavi was also a brilliantly controlled shot, only 63 meters, it hit over fine leg, and really fine, but 100% control on that shot from Uthappa. And he didn't put a foot wrong for his innings. It was a really good innings. And I've said this about Raidu most of the time, but I also mean this about Uthappa as well. With both those two players, it's kind of, even though they don't play cricket apart from the IPL, you never get the feeling that they'll be affected because of rust, because of the fact that they seem up for the challenge, and the shots they played today, mostly Uthappa, but the shot that Raidu played for 6 from Varun Chakravarti over cover, I think that you thought that they just weren't affected by rust at all. And I just think, yes, they are good players, but it's just the attitude which really makes them still be able to play at this level, despite the fact that, as I said, they don't play any cricket apart from the IPL. And I just think that you saw that especially when the way Uthappa went about his business today. While that was all going, Devon Conway got caught by Shreyas Iyer off Umesh Yadav just going down the track. I can't remember whether he's a left-hander or right-hander. I think he is a right-hander, so that would be he was caught at mid-off, but I'm not too sure on that. But yeah, I think he's a right-hander. So Umesh Yadav dismissing both the two openers, and the swing and seam that he got today, I just thought he was magnificent. 2 for 20 in 4 overs, despite conceding a 4, a 6, a no ball and 2 wides, and the no ball and 2 wides all in the first over. And it just shows that his figures, yes, you could say you will go for boundaries, but in any cricket, but it's just the fact that his figures could have been even that bit more better if it weren't for the extras, for example. But even without that, 2 for 20, I just thought it's the best I've ever seen him bowl. He was I would say top class today. And I think that the Devon Conway got out because I think they probably would have wanted to get on with things. He was 3 off 7, and when the partnership was developing, it was quite a blow for CSK. The score 28 at that time, and Robin Uthappa then got out 21 runs later for 28. A ball that was actually a wide down the leg side, but great piece of glove work from Sheldon Jackson, and he was stumped for 28. And it was stumped off Varun Chakravarti. Now, I've said this before. I have no idea why he's not in the India in T20I squad. He's only played 2 games, and that too he played against Pakistan, where, as I said, and New Zealand, the same venue where, as I said, the whole Dubai toss trend at night, which we all know about, and that it would be extremely difficult for the bowlers in the second innings compared to the first. And considering the dew in the Pakistan game, he bowled 3 overs really well and only gave runs in 1 over. And against New Zealand defending 100 odd, he gave 23 runs in 4 overs. So I just think that considering those performances, why you just drop him is just ridiculous. Him and Sunil Narayan bowling in tandem is the best spin duo I've ever seen in cricket. Certainly in the IPL, it should be the best spin duo in the IPL, and certainly for me, just viewing the best spin duo in cricket, with how unplayable of a force these two are. Time and time again, KKR have 8 overs of absolute gold dust. And you saw in this game, the line just out, so you could just draw a straight line just outside the off stump. The ball wasn't turning much at all. But it was just when these two bowled, the batsmen were just completely all over the place, scrambled in their mind. 1 for 23 for Chakravarti, none for 15 for Narayan, unplayable. And as I said, the fact that at that time it kind of seemed like from the first over, it kind of seemed like there were going to be runs we all thought there were going to be a lot of runs in this game, and thought if the venue plays out like it usually does, how would these spinners would bowl well, but would they be as effective that KKR would want them to be, considering their death bowling isn't great? But in this case, we even saw one game or a few games in the first leg of the previous season's IPL. The Wankhede pitch did not play the same as it usually does. It was on the slower side, and in this game it was on the slower side, especially from the time when the death overs of CSK's innings, and certainly in that phase it was. And I thought that even in the second innings, you thought the likes of Sam Billings, for example, and even Shreyas Iyer, the best player spin in the world, he did struggle against the spinners. So it was on the slower side, and I think that really played into KKR's hands, because already with their spinners who just managed to do well, whatever the case is, when there is something, not much, but still something for them, they just bowled mesmerizingly today and were unplayable. It's 49 for 3, then a stupid run out, honestly. I mean, the ball, I think it was Sunil Narayan who kind of threw it back to the bowler. He was standing almost right next to the stumps, even when he picked the ball up. So, and it's not apparent to see whose fault the run out was. Was it Jadeja's, because he may have taken a step? Raidu ran all the way there, but even then it didn't seem like Jadeja was actually going for the run. So Raidu may have run all the way there, even though there was no clear indication. And it just, why would it, the way the ball went, I mean, it's almost right next to the stumps when he picked the ball up. And I mean, this was just a horrendous run. I mean, he wasn't right next to it, but fairly close to it. And yeah, this was a horrendous run, 52 for 4. And then Shivam Dubey, an excellent short ball by Andre Russell, and 61 for 5. Now, there was a brilliant partnership between Jadeja and Dhoni straight afterwards, and you may think, right, 70 runs off 9.5 or 9.1 overs, 70 or 55 would be good for the first 9.1 overs of the innings, but not the last phase. But you have to understand that if you look at how many runs that came off the spinners, there were hardly any. I mean, it was mostly they were unplayable. They had to get their runs off the spinners, and 47 of those runs came in the last 3 overs of the seamers. So they did what they could. Jadeja and Dhoni, I mean, 61 for 5. They didn't have a base to work with. Spinners bowling brilliantly. And they really... In fact, I was actually surprised that Andre Russell's last 2 overs went the way they did, because with the way he bowled in the first 2 overs, you thought they had to capitalise on the 1 over of Umesh Yadav and the last 2 overs of Shivam Mavi. They capitalised on Shivam Mavi's 2 overs, but even then, 9 and over when you're 61 for 5 in, I think, 10.5, you wouldn't have thought, despite the fact that the pitch wasn't the usual Wankhede pitch, you kind of thought they would have needed a lot more than that. They got quite a bit of runs off Andre Russell, but you kind of thought overall, despite 47 runs, they did what they could, 131 for 5, and a 50 for Dhoni, vintage hitting at the end. He was 15 off 25 and then went to 50 off 38. Jadeja struggled for timing, but they were bowling really well, and he hit the 1-6 at the end to bring CSK to 131. And really brilliant from KKR, apart from the death bowling, which was woeful, fairly expected. And now I'm actually going to get to the thing where Sheldon Jackson kept brilliantly. But actually, no, before, it's actually going to tie into what I'm going to say about CSK's innings as well. Because CSK really was... There was an obvious game plan for KKR here, right? They would want their bowlers like Umesh Yadav to bowl well at the top, bowl most of his overs up at the top, 3 overs in the power play. Then you have the likes of their 2 spinners who just strangle the side, and then you have Andre Russell to bowl a few overs at the death, but you don't want him to bowl too much. And what played into CSK's advantage would be that Andre Russell had to bowl 4 overs today, something which you would not want him to do because of the risk of injury. And considering that, if they hadn't had dismissals like the Devon Conway dismissal, despite the fact you could say it was a bit under pressure, but if you look at how the innings went, was there really a need for him to do that, considering Dhoni was 15 of 25 balls and yet went to 50 of 38? There probably wasn't a need to play that shot from Conway. Then you've got Uttapa's disappointing dismissal when he was going really well. And then Ambati Ride, as I said, I mean, that dismissal was just terrible. And Shivam Dubey, yes, it was a good short ball, but he tried to just take it on and he got caught by Narayan. So I think that you look at those dismissals, right, and you just see the fact Andre Russell has to bowl 4 overs. Yes, he bowled 4 overs today, but they wouldn't have known he would have been able to do that. They could have capitalized on that. They could have just thought, if we don't lose too many wickets here, we can capitalize on their death bowling. We were 84 for 5 and 17 overs. Yeah, we hit 47 runs. Yes, Dhoni and Jadeja were there, yes, but with the way the innings was going, we hit 47 runs off 3 overs. So I just think that with that kind of a game plan, an obvious game plan from KKR, and yet CSK found themselves 61 for 5, I mean, that's a bit disappointing. And if you get to KKR's bowling, right, Sheldon Jackson kept brilliantly today. And I think that I understand why they gave him the gloves, because you look at Chakravarti and Narayan, for Sam Billings to keep against those two, it may be a bit of an ask. And if you look at an experienced keeper in the Indian domestic ranks, and he's kept against spinners many times. So I think that, yeah, keeping against the likes of Chakravarti and Narayan will require experience. Someone who has really has kept against spin many times, and that's what Sheldon Jackson has done in the domestic circuit. So yeah, I think that was a fairly good thing, and it paid off with how secure he was. But if they play him, then you'd kind of think they'll probably play Pat Cummins, and it's not really going to solve. It's two separate things, because for the bowling, if you're looking at the bowlers who can improve their death bowling, because Andre Russell, they wouldn't have wanted him to bowl 4 overs consistently, because then and with that being the case, he probably can't play as a third seamer. So you look at the options they have, and they'll want to get Pat Cummins in, but yet that's not going to solve their death bowling. So it's just the fact they don't have. That's the weakness that they're constantly going to have, unless Shivam Mavi has an unreal season at the death. And Andre Russell, you're not going to realistically expect him to bowl 4 overs all the time. The spinners are going to have to keep on just doing what they did today. And it's going to be a fairly unsustainable model to expect to dominate the innings like they did today. And that's the reason why, yeah, they're going to have to somehow work on the death bowling. But also, if they play Sheldon Jackson, they're going to have to play Sam Billings, just a pure batsman. Because if you look at this side, yes, there's Andre Russell, but they need that other pure batsman who can give them that power to finish the innings. You can't rely on Pat Cummins to do that, despite the fact that he scored 83 of 35 against CSK, and he's shown that he can hit the long ball. But I think that Sam Billings, along with Andre Russell, would be that role, that power duo. Because of that, if you play Sheldon Jackson, you can't really play both of them, because Rahane Venkatesh Iyer, Rana Shreyas Iyer, Sam Billings, Andre Russell, Sheldon Jackson. The problem you have with this is you don't have that extra spot for Pat Cummins, because if you play Umesh Yadav, Pat Cummins, Andre Russell, it doesn't solve the problem that Russell has to bowl 4 overs. So the only space that you have to play Sheldon Jackson is probably either Nitish Rana, but if you don't want him to kind of play in the middle order, if you just wanted to play him opening the batting because you don't exactly know what he's going to do in the middle order, the only spot there is Ajinkya Rahane, and it's a disgrace if you drop Ajinkya Rahane, because that's a really good, that's a segue for me to get into this KKR, because he's probably my favorite signing of this entire auction. 1 crore, I predicted it as well before it happened. And yeah, how well did he play today? 44 of 34. I mean, we started off with that cover drive, then the straight drive right over Adam Milne's head. I mean, how he plays, the drives he plays with a straight bat, hardly takes any, basically doesn't take a risk, and still, I have no idea why he just got this thing of tag of not being a great T20 player. Because honestly, the last time he got to play a full season in his opening slot, he scored a century and bags of runs for 2019. And in 2020 and 2021, he's either been on the bench or forced to play at number 3. So he's hardly got an opportunity, and then somehow his reputation has declined when he's not even played. So and even when he has played, as I said, not played in a position of strength. So I just think it's ridiculous. Rahane, for me, is one of the best openers in this tournament. I would pick him any day of the week. And how well he played, I mean, with the straight bat that he plays, I mean, especially if you look at the players with the Seat bat branding on the kind of the sticker on their bat, especially two players come to mind, Ajinkya Rahane and Megha Agarwal mostly. I just think that no one plays as well with a straight bat now in cricket than they do. And so, I really think that you could put Rohit Sharma maybe, but mostly for me, Rahane and Megha Agarwal. I just think that with how he played today, he was magnificent, and you could think him and Venkatesh certainly. KKR, they've got this nice blend of someone who both score aggressively, one that doesn't take risks at all in Rahane but still manages to keep the strike rate up, the other one more extravagant. And coming to Venkatesh, now you kind of feel odd that I've said a positive here, but there's also something which I've said before. So if you look at his offside play, right, he takes a mini strides, almost like he just moves his foot up and just places it right back down where he had it originally, and then he just kind of just plays the ball through the offside, the fuller deliveries, just puts the hands through the ball, and I think that the deliveries he's done that off are the fuller deliveries, but apart from that, and it was actually against Adam Milne in the home series against New Zealand where he did struggle facing that real good length of ball that rose slightly, and he did struggle with that today. He hit some boundaries off the seamers when they bowled half volleys, but I just think he needs a bit more affinity in his technique. The way he got out wasn't too great either off Dwayne Bravo, so he needs a bit of a affinity in his technique, I feel, because I just feel like as I said, like, you've got all the positives that he offers. He really takes on the bowling, gives that fast start, had a great season last year, and was part of the turnaround for KKR to make the final. But I really think against the pace bowling, and once again Adam Milne bowled him in this game as well. When they bowl that real good length, he doesn't really seem to have options of how to play that, get runs off that at all. So that's something you're going to have to work on. And I think really, if you're looking at the characteristics of how this innings started compared to what CSK were a bit ropey with in their innings, the running between the wickets. Now for CSK, they had a bit of a rush of blood and had not only one run out, but many near run outs when they were running between the wickets as quick singles. But also, if you look at KKR, yes, they hit some boundaries at the start, but they got kind of apart from the boundaries, they struggled to rotate strike early on in the innings. And if you look at Rahane, I think after 14 balls, right, if you had taken away the boundaries, he was, I think, 3 of 14. And both of these two, yes, CSK weren't doing it correctly in the first innings, but they looked to get quick singles, and these two weren't doing that. So I think that's the reason why CSK were in the games more for the first bit, despite the fact there were a few boundaries. But then afterwards, as the partnership went along, the release deliveries just kept on going. And the turning point for me was the straight drive from Rahane straight back over Adam Milne's head. Then the release delivery started coming. And for 40, they found themselves 40 without loss and 5.2 with the game pretty much done. Dwayne Bravo got Venkatesh Iyer out, caught behind, and Nitish Rana walked in. And another thing, I have no idea why Shivam Dube was bowled in Nitish Rana. He got the 2 boundaries off him, and a third one not off the batsman, but byes conceded by MS Dhoni. And so 14 runs off that over, I think, and it was a bit puzzling to see why Shivam Dube was bowled when they could have just bowled maybe one of the 2 spinners to just one of the kind of the more front line bowlers. Yes, you could say Jadeja isn't really, he wouldn't have been the main bowler in this attack, but certainly as a spinner, only 2 finger spinners. So I think that they could have at least bowled either him. Maybe he could have bowled at that time to kind of set the tone a bit in this Rana, but instead they bowled Shivam Dube. 14 runs yielded off that over, and you've already given a new batsman a start. And I think everyone got starts from KKR, and Bravo getting 3 wickets today. The only real glimmer of hope in the bowling for CSK. I believe he's equal on wicket with Lasith Malinga, so an incredible feat. Despite the fact that Malinga achieved 170 wickets in 122 games, clearly making him the best bowler in the tournament by absolute miles. But really, congratulations to Dwayne Bravo. I think that he's been an utter legend of the T20 game. And if you're really, I think that despite for all that I said, it's kind of like the ball was still CSK at times. You could say, especially when the 3rd wicket fell at 87, the ball was still gripping at that point as well, and you thought that CSK could maybe inflict a bit of score pressure, considering the best player of spin in the world. It was a bit of a struggle for him facing the spinners, and 20 of 19 for Shreyas Iyer, only hitting a boundary at the end, at the last ball of the game. So clearly there was something in it for CSK that they could have worked with, and I think the scoreboard pressure just wasn't there, which played a huge kind of part in KKR's favour. And it just kind of shows that CSK were in the game. Sam Billings, 25 of 22. And look, we saw the way he played. He just attempted reverse sweeps and everything pretty much. There were only 2 shots which really were of any substance. And there may be a 3rd shot where he just hit the ball for a single, I think, or run 2, I'm not sure. I think he ran 2 playing a sweep, but effectively only 2 shots of real convincing substance in the entire innings. 2 things: I don't know how he scored 25 runs, and 2, I don't know how he lasted 22 balls. A 4 and a 6 for him though, and I think everyone got starts. He's not a bad player of spin, but I actually thought they'd send out Sheldon Jackson, because considering it was getting close to a runner ball at that stage, which seems okay, but then I thought if there are a few dot balls trying to go for a big shot, KKR maybe they wouldn't, so that they don't collapse. But in the end, Sam Milling 25 of 22, and more importantly, Shreyas Iyer remained not out at the end of the innings, because I thought if he got out at that point with even the best player spin in the world struggling, someone like an Andre Russell walks out about in this, maybe you find it a bit uncomfortable. And in the end, KKR getting the job done, about 133 for 4. CSK's bowling, I'm not surprised at all, was fairly toothless, apart from really one player, and that was Dwayne Bravo. Jadeja, none for 25 and 4, 1 for 31 and 4 for Mitchell Santner. I think it started off okay for CSK with the fact that they could bowl kind of that hit that length, and that's why, especially with the lack of strike rotation from the KKR openers at the early on, I think when they weren't getting those boundaries, I think that's what really it set the tone for CSK, but scoreboard pressure just wasn't there. And the moment there was even a bit of leeway for the batsmen, they took it chasing a small score. So Dwayne Bravo, 3 for 20 and 4. And I actually had this thought from yesterday. I posted the video that I filmed day before yesterday, but I actually had this thought from yesterday night. And I think it actually kind of manifested in this bowling card, because Dwayne Bravo was brought on to bowl much earlier than before. He has been brought on to bowl early in the past, but I think they used him today to get those wickets to the middle overs. And that's exactly what I was thinking, because if you've got maybe you rely on Adam Milne and the Indian domestic seamers to bowl at the death, because they're gonna, you're probably, the problem is if you leave Dwayne Bravo to bowl at the death and the domestic seamers don't do their job, it's going to be too late for Dwayne Bravo to have for Dwayne Bravo's impact to make a difference anyway. So what I think could be a fairly good shout is Dwayne Bravo bowls in the middle overs to prevent that kind of the opposition getting away from CSK on pretend a good batting track. Because as I said, if they play, if this was a good batting track, right, and then you've got Andre Russell whacking everyone around. I'm not saying, look, he's obviously going to bat. He's going to bat at number 6, so he's not going to bat kind of straight away or anything. But I'm saying a better example would be the Delhi Capitals, their batting lineup. Rajasthan Royals as well, for example. if someone from there, if they just have a field day, which of these players are gonna get a wicket if you just put Dwayne Bravo to bowl the death? And it's the reason why I thought Prashant Solanki may be a good option for that bit more of variety if they try to take a risk against the leg spinner. I just think in this current side they selected today, Dwayne Bravo bowling in the middle overs may prevent on the odd day teams getting away from CSK when CSK are bowling. And either way, the domestic seamers are going to have to stand up. If they don't do well up front, then it'll be too late for Dwayne Bravo to pull things back at the end. So either way, they're going to have to pull their weight somewhere. And what would be better for the team, considering how things are, is Adam Milne isn't a bad bowler. None of these bowlers are bad bowlers. They just don't have that extra cutting edge. So Dwayne Bravo in the middle overs to just get those wickets, to be that wicket taker. And then maybe if there's one over, maybe they could just bowl him with the death, I don't know. But the domestic seamers bowling either side of him, while Dwayne Bravo just tries to make sure teams don't get away from CSK, especially on better batting tracks. I think that would be much better for CSK. And something that made a difference is that if you actually look at these the CSK seamers like Deshpande and Milne today, was that they bowled in straight lines. Now for KKR, that was really only because kind of one bowler who got seam movement, and that was Umesh Yadav. But when he got it, he was a handful. And that's what I mean by, for seam movement wise, only one bowler had any kind of seam movement today, and that was from CSK's innings, and that was Dwayne Bravo. So to Nitishana. So okay, maybe you could say it's a bit of kind of nitpicking because, but even then, I actually don't think it is, because the ball kind of just went in straight lines. I think it took a bit of, despite the fact that we're hitting good lengths at the start, especially, I think it just took a bit of bite out of what Deshpande and Milne were doing. And when the half volleys came, I think that KKR just eased into things. So that's this game. Once again, it proves that CSK's bowling doesn't have the real penetration apart from Dwayne Bravo. I personally think Dwayne Bravo bowling in middle overs will really be a much better option for the team. They probably haven't used him. He's probably been... Usually you'd get Dwayne Bravo into bowl the death, but in this team, he is the wicket taker in the middle overs. I would certainly, because look, the domestic seamers have to pull their weight at some phase of the innings, whether it's a start or at the end or the middle. So considering that, just give them death bowling duties, try to create something there, and Dwayne Bravo to be the wicket taker in the middle overs. So that's on this game. And yeah, let's see what happens next tomorrow. Delhi versus Mumbai and Punjab versus Bangalore. And based on this game, and also from what I saw on paper, every single team has a better attack than CSK this season on paper. And in this game, it kind of showed, because despite the fact that the two spinners still bowled, Jadeja and Santner still bowled kind of on the off stump. The reason why they didn't have, yes, their figures aren't really too bad, but in fact they're quite good. But the reason why they didn't have as much of an impact or anywhere near the same impact as KKR was just the way they bowled. I mean, for KKR's spinning, it's just a mesmerizing line. So it's outside the off, despite the fact that there wasn't too much turn at all. And yet they were so unplayable on a surface that didn't offer much turn. Just imagine if there's even a little bit more. What if, this kind of a similar pitch is reproduced on quite a few occasions, and then it kind of has a bit more turn in it, maybe as the tournament goes along. These two will be a force to reckon with. And KKR have got 8 overs of gold dust, honestly. And if Andre Russell even bowls 2 overs of the death, when Andre Russell bowls in his own song, he's an absolutely brilliant bowler. The thing for Andre Russell is, if he never got injured, he would be the greatest T20 cricketer, honestly, because with his batting and with his bowling, he's good enough to be a kind of a third seamer in bowling 4 overs. I think that in 2016 he took the new ball. In 2021, I think that from 2020 and 2021 his death bowling skills have really improved, and he got a 5 in 2 overs in the previous season. So I think that certainly, yes, if Andre Russell didn't get injured, he would be probably the best T20 cricketer, to ever play the game, considering of the all-round impact that he would have. But yeah, that's the positives on KKR. For CSK, MS Dhoni played a brilliant innings, 50 of 30 from 15 of 25. He hits 35 runs in the last 13 deliveries, and hit it off Ananda Russell, who got it slightly wrong in the last 2 overs. Just, I thought with his rhythm that he got in the first 2 overs, he'd be much better. But MS Dhoni took advantage of that. A magnificent innings from him. And yeah, really, that's this game. Let's see what happens in the next 2 games tomorrow. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and please share this video with your friends. And remember, this is my opinion. What's yours?